Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
Hey, what's up, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. Ton of questions to get into. If you want to know how to leave a question, make sure you're subscribed and notified. Click that notification bell. Make sure all notifications are turned on so that when I do post into the community prompt, you get notified of that and you get first dibs at asking questions to be on this show. This question comes from Buckeye Steve. Buckeye Steve says this: does the right contract tell us anything about how Jimmy, how AB's job security? My bad. I'm trying to fix the graphic while I'm also reading. Does the right contract tell us anything about AB's job security? I feel like if Jimmy was thinking of firing him, he wouldn't be letting him negotiate long-term deals for guys in late November. Keep up the great work, Q, as always. Appreciate it. I think there's multiple ways to look at this. I think there is that perspective of it. Hey, it's a little late in the season for somebody on the hot seat to be negotiating deals, especially if you plan to have a full reconstruction of what this team's going to be and who's picking this team's pieces together. That could certainly make you feel like, hey, this guy's safe. On the other hand, you can say, well, it's not that expensive of a deal. There's an out after 2 years. If the Browns have to move on, this deal being made at this point in time wouldn't necessarily stop them from moving on. I think I tend to lean more in that first kind of explanation, that this does mean AB is more secure. I've been thinking that for this whole time, so maybe I'm just leaning towards my bias there. But yeah, I think, since Alex Wright is one of those tweener players where in certain defenses he could get lost in the shuffle, I think there is a long-term plan there for Alex Wright, and at least for the defense. Now, what does it say for Kevin Stefanski? I tend to not really know when it comes to that. But Andrew Berry, his job security, I think this is a positive sign that he might be in a good place with ownership, at least, because, again, they're not going to let you just pick players if they think they're going to get fired. Tim Jern says, what's up, Q? Your insight makes coping with other horrible much more tolerable. Keep killing it. Appreciate you. My question is about college quarterback prospects. We already know some of your thoughts on the big three: Mendoza, Moore, Simpson. Although I'm shocked in your more recent videos, you had Moore above Simpson. I felt the same way. Coming into the year, Oklahoma's John Mateer was mentioned as a first-round talent, possibly. When I've watched him, I've seen him make NFL-level throws. He looks apart to my amateur eye. What are your thoughts on him as a project? If you have not spoken on this and I missed it, my apologies. I haven't really spoken that much about John Mateer. He does have a nice arm. From what I gather from the people who watch him closely, there's a lot of massive questions about what he sees on the football field, right? And that is something, when you combine it with the amount of experience that John Mateer has, that I just find very unsettling, right? When you have a super experienced quarterback and then you have people watch their tape and they're not really sure why the quarterback is making some of the decisions that they're making, it's not good, and it's not an indicator that that's going to be fixed, right? I made a similar point about Cam Ward last year, where people were banking on him fixing some things that he's done his whole college football career, and I felt like Cam Ward was too old at 23 to really get away with that as a prospect. So yeah, that's the big concern, is that when people watch John Mateer, they think that he does not see the field well at all, does not process what he's seeing well at all, And that leads to him making decisions that are ultimately very head scratching. And that's why, despite the fact that he does have a high tier arm, people aren't really interested in him in that first round conversation. We're going to get to more questions, but before I do that, I thank my sponsor for today, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. All right, next question comes from Real Brother Brown, who says, "What's up, Q? Feel like both Barry and Kevin know they are returning next season. Just not enough urgency to course correct potentially with a new job on the line. Feel like Haslam gave them insurance before the season began. Agree or disagree?" I think it's hard to judge, especially with Kevin, right? Andrew, I think there's enough there, right? The fact that he traded back in the draft last year to get an extra first, felt secure about, where the team is, and then also felt secure enough about where the team is to, be free to draft best player available versus just like trying to pick at need. Like nothing that Andrew Barry has done over the last 2 years has felt desperate. And I think that's good. You don't want your front office making desperate decisions. With Kevin, you know what I mean? Like there's a little bit more desperation there. Now, to be fair, there's really not that much Kevin can really do to address this situation. It's like being in a roller coaster, right? Once you're locked in to that ride and they hit that button, there's not a lot of adjusting you're going to be able to do. You're pretty much locked in place here for this season, especially after the trade deadline. I would say the fact that they're not making like any kind of like panic moves tells you that maybe they're okay with a bad season here. Even with the offense looking the way it does, I think that, maybe that could be the case. I do think Kevin switching offensive coordinator responsibilities the last couple of years, it does feel a little bit more desperate than anything Andrew Barry has done, right? Like him switching out play caller responsibilities, that kind of stuff does feel desperate. But all in all, whether they're going down on the boat or not, these are two people who were hired here because of their poise. So even if they were in that situation, Kevin and Andrew, I don't think they would really show it much. Like the reason they're here and what the organization really likes about them is their consistency in their behavior, right? Andrew Barry's going to be the same person in an 11-win season that he's going to be in a 2-win season. And that can drive people crazy when you're in the middle of a 2-win season. But it is a good thing in the long run, right? Kevin Stefanski has a similar quality about him. And when the team's winning, people love him. He wins Coach of the Year. When the team's losing, people hate him. But he's generally saying the same exact things at press conferences and acting the same way he's always acted. Like that Kevin's behavior, whether you like him or not, you can say has been consistent. So whether he's on the hot seat or not, I would expect his behavior to remain consistent. The same can be true for Andrew Barry as well. So yeah, it hasn't felt like there's a sense of urgency there, but these are not people who tend to give away if there would be that kind of a situation with how they act, because they pride themselves in not succumbing to that kind of pressure, if you feel what I'm saying. So I don't know if it's really indicative whether they got the insurance before the season or not. I just think it's more of an indicator of how Andrew Barry and Kevin Stefanski operate from a mental standpoint, which is they pride and value mental consistency through chaos, whether that means they're in a chaotic situation or not. And to be fair to Kevin Stefanski, that was the big thing that stood out with him when he got here in 2020. All the chaos in the world that he dealt with that year and the year he won Coach of the Year in 2023, he was the same guy. And that ended up being a really good thing for the team, right? But when you're the same guy and the team's losing, it feels like you're not doing enough to change. And that's kind of the problem that they're running up against right now. So, I don't think we could read too much into it either way, is my point. Tyrone says, once they're free of the Watson contract, what do you think they'll do with all the extra money? Sign a couple of high-end free agents or just sit and slowly make adjustments to the roster? It's not going to be one big kaboom, right? Like, I think people are expecting it's going to be like, oh, we got for the Watson, let's go ahead and drop another bag. It's not going to be another big kaboom. It's going to be gradual over time because they're still, even after Watson's off the roster, paying off some dead cap here and there over the next 2-3 years, right? I think up until like 2031, they're paying off some percentage of cap to Deshaun Watson. Obviously not a massive percentage of cap, but just a little bit. I think it'll be gradual. You'll just be like, hey, every year we're adding more free agents. It's not going to be like one big name that they say, hey, this is what we're going to do because Watson's not here. Doesn't seem to be how they operate. It's going to be gradual over time, and the benefits will be gradual over time. I don't expect there to be like one giant, off season, and then the Browns bring in like 20, 3 big name free agents, right? I don't think you should set yourself up for those expectations. I think you should expect, if we stretch this out, right, from here to like 2033, they'll gradually spend more as each year goes by. But it's not going to all be in one off season because, again, spending all that money at one shot, it's how they ended up in the situation that they're digging out of right now. Muse says this: Kevin is a stoic, pretty chill kind of coach. Do you think all the attention and media focus on the first Deshaun Watson trade, then the guy himself, and now Shador helped burn him out? And if we do get a new top 5 QB with him at head coach, could getting his guy revitalize him enough to bring him back to the creative floor that he used to bring before 2024? I would not underestimate the power of just being fully moved on to a new era could have, right? Like if Kevin is going from a situation where he does not feel very supported because he's being asked to eat the raw end of the Watson deal. Again, when you think of that trade, it's not just $230 million went towards a quarterback that's not active for you anymore. It's also 3 first-round picks, 2 4th-round picks, and a 3rd-round pick, all going towards a player who's not active for you. Imagine the devastating effect that would have if you use those draft picks and that was the result of the team, right? If you use 3 first-round picks, all those guys just were inactive or cut from your team. You use 2 4th-round picks, all those guys cut inactive. People freak out over like a 3rd-round pick that gets cut or is inactive, right? Imagine that amount of draft capital. We're talking about 3, 4, 5, 6 guys. And then realistically, 4 of those guys you would expect to start. So he got the raw end of this deal. Now, that doesn't mean he couldn't have done more to avoid being in the exact position he is at today. I think he could have. And that's ultimately why I think there's an argument to fire him. But the truth is he did get a raw deal here, right? Like there's no denying that he got a raw deal here. He got the raw end of this Watson thing. And maybe the internal belief is, hey, we're going to fully support the offense this offseason. We're going to get him players. We're going to get him a quarterback. We're going to get him a wide receiver. And maybe that infusion of investment on the offense that's desperately needed it over the last couple of years will be enough to re-energize Kevin and to get him to look more like the coach of the year that he used to be, at least creatively. That is certainly one hope, but it is a hope nonetheless, right? And look, whether you fire Kevin Stefanski, keep Kevin Stefanski, there's always going to be a strong percentage chance that whatever you do backfires in your face, right? You can fire Kevin, revitalize the offense, bring in somebody else, and that person is much worse than Kevin Stefanski. That's definitely possible. I know people tell themselves all the time, it's my least favorite phrase, it can't get any worse. Like we haven't lived through it getting worse in Cleveland over the last 20 years. It always can get worse. But the reality is Kevin Stefanski's a competent coach. It can get worse than what it is right now. I think it can get better, but it can't get worse. But let's say you do hire a coach, it's not Kevin, to move on, and that guy, it backfires and he stinks. Let's say you keep Kevin Stefanski, you bet on this revitalizing him, and he's bad next year. You got to fire him in the middle of the season. That also backfires, right? There is no backfire-free possibility with this football team and the decision that they have to make a coach this year. Ultimately, they have to get together in their process and figure out why it is that the offense has been this poor over the last 2 years and make a decision on what they feel like can get the offense to where they want it to be, because there's no way around it. The offensive product on the field for the last 2 years has been unacceptable. Regardless of whatever excuse you could throw out there, it's been unacceptable. So if something's unacceptable, there has to be a good reason for it to exist in order for the people who are seemingly responsible for it not to get fired. And that's what they have to dig to. What's the response? Why is it like this? Like, yeah, the Watson trade, I can believe that's part of it. And that's why I would not expect this offense to be good. But it shouldn't be this bad. You know, what is the logic behind it? If they have an internal reason to keep Kevin Stefanski and it's process driven and it's not just emotional, cool, whatever, do what you want to do. But if that's not the case and their process takes them towards a different head coach, I'm not going to be upset at that either, you know? But whatever they do, it cannot be just off pure emotion. It has to be process driven, and it has to be because they identified a problem that they want to fix with the next hire. If they don't think firing Kevin solves that problem, then don't fire him. Like if they do their internal scouting and they say, no, the problem is just, it's this, that, and the third. It's not really Kevin. If that's where their process takes them, so be it. But if the process says, hey, no, Kevin's part of the problem, you got to get rid of him. It's really that simple to me. Luke says this. If Shedeur wins and balls out on Sunday, is he the starter for the rest of the season, or do they go back to Dylan? If it were me, I would say, sure, why not let Shedeur start if he wins, especially if he plays well, right? Like, I'm going to prepare people for the distinct possibility that both quarterbacks could play bad in this game, and one of these teams are going to win it, right? Like, I could see Geno Smith having a pretty poor game. I could see Shedeur Sanders having a pretty poor game. It is distinctly possible that one of these guys could play poorly and still end up winning the game. It happens all the time. We've seen it happen this year with the Browns, where, you know, one of the quarterbacks for the Browns plays pretty poorly, but we end up beating Green Bay anyways, right? So you can win and not ball out, but if he wins and balls out, best quarterback performance, let's say he goes 300, right? First quarterback all season even touched 300, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no turnover-worthy plays, just balls out. Why not, right? Do I think the Browns will bench him to go back to Dylan Gabriel? Ooh, now you got a can of worms on your hands, right? The big thing for like why it's difficult to bench Dylan Gabriel is he had not been playing bad enough to justify it to people who need a benching like that to be justified in that locker room, right? It's easy for fans to say, we've seen enough, we don't care. But if you're somebody who, you know, your employment is with the Browns and you play football for a living, you're not going to be comfortable with the team saying, hey, this guy's playing statistically okay, and you're going to bench him because you want to see what they got in the other guy. It's not going to sit well with the locker room. I know it's a shock to some people, but it's not going to sit well with people. So you have to be aware of that dynamic. And that dynamic's been in favor of keeping Dylan Gabriel in the spot that he has been so far. But if Shedeur does ball out, go for 300 yards, so all of a sudden that dynamic flips. And it becomes a lot harder to justify going back to Dillon Gabriel. If Shedeur does something offensively, regardless of if it's against a good team or not, because the Browns aren't a good team, that Dillon and all the other quarterbacks have not done all season, then yeah, it's hard to justify it. So yeah, if Shedeur goes out there 300 yards, absolutely balls out, wins rookie of the week, whatever the fuck he's got to do, then yeah, he's going to probably keep the starting job for the rest of the season because it just becomes hard to justify putting Dillon in over him if you're trying to sell to your team that you're trying to win every game possible, right? That argument has been in favor of Dillon Gabriel the last couple of weeks, slightly so because Dillon has just, his numbers haven't been outrageously bad. But all of a sudden, if Shedeur goes out there, puts up numbers, then yeah, it changes. But that's what would have to happen, right? Like if Shedeur goes out there and sneaks out a win, but doesn't really play that well, it's probably not going to happen. If Shedeur goes out there and plays well, but loses, maybe there's a conversation, but you know, I'm interested to see how it plays out because I think there's a lot of different scenarios that could be interesting for that game. All right, Aaron Matthews says this. Is this the week that decides on if the Browns tank the rest of the season? When and Shedeur has a breakout, does that change the draft strategy too? Maybe too early yet, but it feels like this is make or break. It's not a make or break week. It's really not. I would say this. What will the factor that a quarterback this season controls in the Browns' quarterback decision for next year is draft position. If the Browns are in a position to take a quarterback that they like in the top 5, they're going to take that quarterback. If the Browns are not in a position to take a quarterback in the top 5, a trade up for a quarterback then becomes an entirely different conversation. It's about draft position, right? If Shedeur Sanders plays the Browns out of obvious draft position for a quarterback in this draft, then he will have a hand in changing the Browns draft strategy. Now, does that mean that they rule out trading up for a pick? I don't think so. But it does raise the price for that quarterback. Right now, if quarterback is there with your natural pick, it's a no-brainer. It's a bargain. You take that every time. If you move back in the draft order and now it's going to cost you a second or maybe an extra first to get that guy, the price of the quarterback is going up and you might be saying, hey, is the price too high for what we're going to get? Or do we just give this Shedeur thing a try? What becomes more appealing at that point, right? That's going to matter. But if the Browns, their draft position does not change, if they don't win any games, then none of this shit matters. If Shedeur puts up numbers, but the Browns lose every game they play in, it's not going to change a goddamn thing because the Browns are going to take a quarterback because they're in position to take a quarterback, and it's just a no-brainer to take a quarterback in that position. But if they play themselves out of that position, then yeah, all of a sudden the conversation starts to shift because maybe you don't like Shedeur more than you like Mendoza, or don't like Shedeur more than you like Moore, or you like Shedeur, or you don't like Shedeur more than you like Ty Simpson, right? Maybe those 3 names, you're going to take them if you could take them with your pick. But if those 3 guys are gone by the time you're selecting or not accessible in the draft via trade, or maybe you have to trade up for a pick, it becomes a different conversation. It becomes a different, maybe you're comparing Shedeur against a different set of players. Maybe do you like Shedeur and what you've seen out of him more than Brendan Sorsby? And you might say to yourself, maybe we keep Shedeur. That's how that conversation is going to work. The Browns draft position is the main indicator of what they're going to do. Not necessarily the performance of any of these rookie quarterbacks. I think they're quite okay with these 2 battling out to be back up next year. You know what I mean? I don't think the plan is let's hold up next year, not take a quarterback we like because we took 2 guys day 2, day 3. I don't think that's going to factor in. But that's my 2 cents on that. All right. Giordano says this. If the Browns beat Las Vegas, Tennessee, and end up with the round, they would not end up with the 7th pick with 4 wins. They would probably still be in the top 5. But do they consider trading with a team like the New York Giants or Tennessee if they end up with a 1 or 2 pick for Mendoza, if they believe he's a franchise quarterback? If they believe that he's the answer at quarterback and Tennessee's willing to deal, they'll probably make a deal if that deal is reasonable. I don't know if they go 3 first-round pick territory, but if they're sitting at 4 wins, right, and only 2 wins are against like Las Vegas and Tennessee, I think that means they would be picking. Let's do the math on that real quick. That would have the Browns, if you look at win percentage, sitting around the 6th pick of the draft, right? So the commenter was right, 6th or 7th pick in the draft. So my apologies. I thought you would be wrong there, but you're right as it stands right now. Moving up from 7 to 2, that probably mean an extra second. If they think Mendoza is if you think he's a franchise quarterback, right? If you think he is the guy, if you are in love with him, that is a reasonable price to pay, right? If you aren't, then, well, it's not. So it's going to come up to individual preference there and how much the Browns want him. And I do think once you do get to 6 or 7, like I discussed before, it starts to become a factor of like, hey, what do you think of Shador? What do you think of Dylan? Right? Do you think highly enough of them that they could have a similar outcome to the quarterback that you could be drafting? Or how different of an outcome do you think that is? And can you close the gap of that outcome with the picks that you would be saving? So, if you're saying to yourself, no, we don't think Shador is going to be as good as Fernando Mendoza, do you think keeping a extra first and a second can bridge that gap between those 2 players by just giving them a better roster? Or do you think that the gap is just greater than those picks can fill, so you just use that to trade for Mendoza? That's kind of the stuff that they have to factor in. But yeah, Tennessee being at the top of this draft, that's going to be interesting because the Browns are going to want to use them as a trade partner. Now, I will say if you're the Browns, you probably don't want to fall out the top 5 because Tennessee is much more likely to trade with you if you are in the top 5 because they want one of those 2 edge rushers, more than likely. Arvell Reese, Ruben Bain. They want one of those 2 guys. So at 7, I think that's too rich for them, and they're going to ask for a lot in return. At 5 or 4, I think it's a very easy conversation to have with them. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. The draft is a very long time away, though. Lake Huron says this. Do you think the Browns really believe in Gabriel, or are they using him to quietly tanking? Here's what I think. There is that report that the Browns had Dylan Gabriel number 2 on their board or something equivalent of number 2, their number 2 option there. It's important to be distinct about like, hey, you had a guy ranked on your board, but what kind of grade did you have on him? You could be number 2 in a position group, but have a 3rd, 4th round grade, and they clearly had a 3rd, 4th round grade on Dylan Gabriel. I think they believe in Dylan Gabriel. I don't think they're using him out there to quietly tank. I don't think you need to spend a 3rd round pick to get a quarterback that can tank for you. You could just use Bailey Zapp. I think they truly do believe in Dylan Gabriel to be a NFL quality quarterback that could potentially have some upside. I think for me, I would be looking at the Davis Mills draft pick that Houston used as the template for Dylan Gabriel. Right. Davis Mills was somebody that Houston tried out as a starter for a little bit. Didn't work out. They got the chance to take CJ Stroud. They took CJ Stroud, but they didn't necessarily give up on Davis Mills. They kept working with him, developing him, and he became a really strong backup for the Houston Texans. Hell, he's keeping the Houston Texans season alive, winning 3 games in a row while he's been asked to start, while CJ Stroud has been in concussion protocol. And if you can get that kind of outcome from Dylan Gabriel, where you try him out as the starter for a little bit, you find out you don't like him as the starter. You get somebody you like as the starter, Simpson, Mendoza, Moore, whoever it is. you trot them out, you put all the resources behind them, but in the background, you're still working with Dillon as a backup. And then maybe in a couple of years, the Browns season's at a tough spot and Dillon Gabriel steps in, starts a couple of games for them and helps the Browns season stay alive. If that's the scenario that they end up with Dillon Gabriel, I think they'll call that one a acceptable outcome for the draft selection that they use on him. It wouldn't be exciting, but it would be an acceptable outcome. That's it for Q&A. I want to thank you guys for asking the questions. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.